Afternoon, Joseph. How are we?
Gosh,
I'm very good as well. Summer holiday now. Very beautiful
damn,
days nowadays.
damn.
I'm just yeah. There's a bit of me that's like I need to relax, but then I'm also on edge because obviously I've got my UCAT in a couple weeks, and the pressure still hasn't dawned on me yet because I'm still well, I'm not still, but a couple weeks ago was the period of time where I'm like I've just finished my UCAS. I've just finished my predicted exams. So I still
Mm,
want that time to just get all of that pressure and weight off of my chest and just relax a
yeah,
bit. And now I need to realize
yeah,
like it is UCAT, and if anything, it's probably one of the most hardest tests that I want to do. So I'm still like,
yeah,
I need to do something.
yeah.
But anyway, that's enough about me.
Damn,
How
man.
have you been? How have you been?
I've been perfectly fine, really, but let me just give you a bit of a reality check, young man. That's probably one of the most important exams that you'll probably likely ever sit, just behind your, of course, final A levels. So let
Okay.
me just tell you this: if you don't get the required grade that you need in this, you get raps. Yeah, Oxbridge,
Ah,
Imperial, yeah. Let me tell you something. Perform, young man. Okay, there's a lot riding on this.
okay.
Okay, and this pod as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
without a shadow
That's
of
that's
doubt,
you
of
know that
course, I know
that's
you're gonna
the
smash
that,
it.
that's the confidence
Yeah,
boost that I needed.
hopefully, I was hoping for a bit more of a scare rather than confidence boost because I feel like
No,
confidence
no,
could only be temporary for so
you've
long,
definitely,
but discipline, of course, could.
you definitely scared me, man. Don't worry.
I definitely. Oh, have I skipped? Okay, great, perfect. Now, back to me now. Okay, great. Okay, great. Yeah, no, I've been doing all right. Yeah, just starting at work. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so 1 week at GSK as a trainee pharmacist now in the formulations team. Quite enjoying myself,
Good.
and I haven't really been up to much apart from work, of course, and a lot of driving. But yeah, I've been all right apart from that. Vihursh, thank you for
All
asking.
right.
But on to more
That's good. That's
important
good.
news. Um, we're here to talk about a phenomenal, groundbreaking achievement which you have pulled through with. So, if you don't mind me asking, uh, for myself and the viewers, what is it that has happened in the last 4 weeks that is truly groundbreaking and mind blowing to me? To be honest, I wouldn't say it was mind blowing. I had a feeling deep down that you were going to get this, but yeah, if you don't
But
mind
on the
enlightening
surface, you had
both
no faith
myself
in me,
again
right?
and the viewers. No, don't say it like that. Surface tension is strong. You know, my
Okay.
surface tension is very strong. What's the insect called? The one that kind of floats with the water surface
You
tension.
talk. You
They
talk.
call me
What?
water for a reason because my surface tension goes crazy. But yeah,
Okay.
go on.
No. So
Yeah, I don't know what.
in the past 4 weeks, I've been getting my exam grades back for the ones that I sat in June, and those grades are obviously my predicted for whatever unis I
Yeah,
applied to. So they're not the official A levels.
yeah,
Those are the ones I'm going to be doing next year. These are the ones before. And basically, with these grades, I applied to the unis and they give me offers based on, they're basically hedging their bets. So it's conditional offers on me getting those grades in the actual A levels next year. And the three grades I got were all three A stars. But before I go on to talk about how I got those, I do want to say they weren't like top, all of those grades weren't all like the top A stars, if you see what I mean. One of them was on the cusp of being an A, and another one, although it was an A star, my mark was horrendously low. But I'll get into that in a bit. And then, so technically, I only got one true A star, and that was in chemistry, which was probably the easier of the three.
but irrespective of that, an A star is an A star. So why are you trying to downplay what you've achieved?
No,
Look,
no,
this
I'm
is
not.
how humble this young man.
Look. I
Guys,
say
Captain
that.
Kendrick. Yeah,
No,
and his album.
I'm just
Sorry,
trying
what
to
was it?
highlight. I'm just trying to highlight that it's not like I've gotten three A stars and three 99% in all of my exams. That's not. I'm just trying to highlight
Oh,
that.
Yeah.
it's very
Okay.
feasible.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very this is very feasible. You don't need the top of the top marks to get the A stars. That's what I'm trying to highlight. And yeah,
Okay.
basically
Yeah.
just
Thank you. Yeah. That makes sense.
getting rid of any gray areas that
Yeah.
people might have on trying to achieve these
Yeah.
grades.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. That's good. I thought you were downplaying what you had achieved. And I was like, wait a damn minute. Wait a damn minute,
Mm,
young man. You absolutely smashed it out of the park. But yeah, we want to know how you did that. That's for sure. That's why I'm asking you the questions today. Number one, how did you do it? How are you so much of an academic powerhouse, aka the mitochondria of a cell? All right. How are you such a powerhouse when it comes to academia? All right. And finally, really, like, actually, you know what? I'm gonna leave it with those two questions first. Like, firstly, more of a broader context question here to begin with. How
okay,
did you do
well,
it?
those two questions are basically the same questions.
That,
I'll
that is
tackle them
absolutely.
both
You
at
know what?
once.
That's a really, really bad question. Hold on. Let me rephrase it. Let me one up that question real quick. So, how you did it is slightly too subjective, but let's do it on this basis because, of course, to get to this caliber or level, to achieve 3A stars, that requires a lot of consistency, discipline, and a bit of motivation as well to kind of get you across that finish line. So throughout this past year, could you talk us through how is it that you've stayed, number one, so consistent, disciplined in what you did, and you came out on top, so like, just talk us through how you did that. Is that all right?
Yes, so with your consistency throughout the year, first of all, I've not been consistent at all with any of my revision. The consistency more came in, wait, hold on. The consistency came in more
Mm,
towards the last 5 months leading up to exams, where I started to realize,
yeah.
okay, I need to start doing a little bit at a time. And that's what you hear a lot nowadays. Start doing a little at a time.
Mm,
When you start to feel that pressure of exams, like, when you see, you know in your head when you're like, we have months and not more than that until the exam. So I actually need to be knuckling down and having a think about how I want to start my revision. So when I started entering that sort
yeah.
of brain mode, then I started relying on being consistent with a small amount of work each and every day. And in terms of discipline and motivation, those are a bit harder to address because motivation, I feel like, varies from day to day, depending on how you are as a person and how you react to things that go on around you. Because you could have a really bad day and not feel like doing anything. And I can guarantee almost everyone's had that. And on those days, you just sort of have to do what you feel comfortable with. But as long as it's revision, then you're fine. So, for instance, what I mean by that is, if you've had like a long day and you don't feel like doing a lot of revision, then the best thing I would recommend on those sort of days is do something that you know you're gonna be, that you're good at, basically. And if you do something like that, then you'll get like a bit of reassurance and a bit of extra external motivation from the marks that you get back on something that you've done. Like if you've answered some questions on a topic that you're really good at and you get like 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5 on that, that's going to give you a bit of motivation to do something that you find a bit more challenging perhaps the next day or the same evening. So if you really plan your work based on how you're feeling throughout the day, I feel like you can really capitalize off of gaps in your knowledge and things like that.
Okay. Okay. That's really good, Vihursh. So, like, of course, I understand that you might have a busy schedule in a given week. If you were to say to someone who was trying to achieve what you have just achieved, right, who's going into year 12, who's incredibly ambitious of getting into a career like medicine. Now, I just understand you just finished your year 12, but just to give them a bit of advice, is there anything that you would have done slightly differently, right? Knowing that although that you kind of switched up going into the last 5 months and lead up to your exam, is there anything that you think that you would have done differently or would tell someone to do differently if they are now entering year 12 and aspiring to do something like medicine?
Yes. And I don't know if it counts as one thing or quite a few things, but the switch up from GCSEs like to A levels, and I think we addressed this when I was at the GCSE stage, but that switch up is huge. It's a big jump from learning all the GCSE content at a fairly slow pace compared to suddenly being thrown into having 10 lessons a week on the same topic, and you're finishing topics within like 4 weeks, whereas in GCSEs you would finish a topic in like 6 to 8 weeks. And that switch up, I think, really threw me off, because it meant that I was still approaching revision with the GCSE mindset, wherein I was fairly laid back and I wouldn't really go over the work that I had done maybe a couple months ago or something like that. So that meant I had gaps in my knowledge. And one thing about A level is that all of the things that you learn, or this is true for at least the sciences, all of the things that you learn in your topics, they'll keep coming back over and over again in future topics and in future questions. So if you don't know something that you learned from day one and that's not in your head, then you're going to find something like day 300 really difficult, because you find something similar between the two, or they complement each other. So all I'm trying to say is, when you start off year 12, don't go in with the attitude that you can revise, you can leave all the revision to last minute. I'd recommend doing a little bit each and every day, just reconciliating. Is that the word? Reconciliating?
Reconciliation.
Yeah, that word.
I don't even know. Yeah, I think it sounds right, yeah.
Reconciling. I'm going to go with that. But you know what I mean, just giving yourself reassurance that you know what you've learnt and you're solidifying what you've learnt. In fact, I saw a video quite some time ago, and that sort of helped me with this sort of mindset. And that is, it was a video of this person who was basically giving you advice on how to revise, and he was saying, every time you learn, you go to school and you get back home, just before you go to sleep, spend about 5 to 10 minutes just looking over your notes that you made that day. And if you do that, then naturally when you're asleep, you know how your memories build up and everything that you've experienced throughout the day go into your long-term memory, things like that. If you see a piece of information just before you sleep, you're more likely to remember it than if you glide over it and don't look at it at all before you go to sleep. So that's one piece of advice that I'd say. Keep coming back to the day one, keep coming back to the early stages, and revise those things, because they're going to prop up later on. And just one more thing.
Yeah, no, that's great.
One more piece of advice that I'd like to give. It's just gone out of my head. I'm trying to think. What was it? Oh yes. When you get to the last 4 or 5 months leading up to your exams, I'd say start learning your theory first for the first month or 2, and then as soon as you get within that time frame, the time period where you've got 3 or less months leading up to the exam, then you start applying that knowledge. Because I can guarantee everyone in A-level knows most of the theory, knows most of the information, and can regurgitate it when they're asked a question. But the application part is very difficult if you don't practice. So I'd say in the last 3 months, really focus on application. And the best way to focus on application, and the best way that I did it, was to do past paper questions and to do the longer 6 markers, the longer 4 markers, the lengthy questions, which really require you to think and reflect on what it is you know, and reword it in a way that actually answers the question, rather than just vomits out all the knowledge that you know, if you see what I mean. So those questions are particularly difficult for science, because they can twist a piece of information in so many different ways, and they can get you, they can take marks off just like that. So definitely focus on application with your last 3 months leading up to the exams.
No, without a doubt, you beautifully said, Vihursh. As I'd just like to say, I'd like to pick up on a couple of things that you just mentioned. So firstly, beginning with revisiting information. Now, of course, I feel like you've indirectly answered a lot of what I'm about to ask you, right? But if you could kind of hyper-focus on certain techniques in which you utilized, although despite already mentioning how you did it, if you can enlighten our viewers possibly the technique that you've used, how you used it, where you've used it, and possibly a timetable in which they can possibly even abide by. So what I mean by this is, so say for example, I'm coming up into the last 3 months of my revision. Okay, I'm struggling to get, let's say, the theories. Say someone who's struggling to encapsulate all the theory within biology, because biology has a lot of theory and also some degree of application. I feel like the more you go towards the chemistry and physics, there is a lot more on the application aspect with respect to the formulas and whatnot that is used, but also there's a balance with the theory as well.
Yeah.
But if we could focus on biology and that respect to begin with. But let me just break down what I've just asked you into two parts. So firstly, if you could just kind of revisit the techniques that you used, possibly even brush over the fact that you mentioned solidify. What do you mean by when you say solidify the information that you learned? You say you revisited the information at the end of the day. How actively do you think that they should review that information? Because there's two ways, of course, as we know, to review information, actively and passively. Barbara Oakley's book, right? A Mind for Numbers. So from reading that book, I'm sure you've obviously gotten a lot out of it. So if you could break down in that regard, possibly the techniques that you used, and thereafter, if you could then go on to explain, possibly for someone who is in A-level biology, how is it that they can prepare in the lead up to their exams for a content or subject that is quite heavily based with theory, but also some degree of application as well? How would you advise in that preparation phase for such an exam? These are very obscure questions. Do take your time with them.
No, those were good questions, and I'm glad you brought up what I meant by solidifying, because the way you can solidify your work is, I like to think of it in two different ways. The first one is the shorthand method, which is doing it daily, a little bit a day, and the second one is leaving it all up until 1 week, maybe solidifying a month's worth of work. And I did a mix of both. The first way to solidify, so the short one, is, let's say you have 3 lessons in a day. When you get back that night, I'd look over your book. If you like highlighting, I'd highlight the most important pieces of text or underline them, or even rewrite them in a new book that you have. So when I started A-level, when I started year 12, I took 1 extra book from each of my subjects, and in that extra book would be, I guess you could say, neater notes, because when I'm in class, I find it very difficult to write down everything on the board or write down everything the teacher's saying in a nice, organized manner. Some people are really good at that, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm seeing beautiful notes that some people are writing, whereas mine are like a complete mess. So sometimes I take the time out of lessons, whether it's on the same day or on the same week, to rewrite the important parts of the notes, not the whole thing, just the important parts. Pick and choose the important parts and rewrite them in a new book. Or if you're running really short on time, then just highlight it. Now, the second way to solidify, the longer one, is, I found quite useful as well, was, let's say I think it's usually like 6 weeks and you have a 1 week holiday, or 6 weeks and then you have a 2 weeks holiday. In that 1 week holiday, I'd spend a couple days looking back over the previous 6 weeks worth of work for a specific subject, and then I'd go online and I'd make flashcards out of them. So I'd have my book open from that 6 weeks of work, and then I'd have a textbook maybe to complement that, and I'll just go through, mix and match, see if there's any gaps in my work that are filled in by the textbook, or vice versa. And then that way, when I make my flashcards, I have like a nice round complete set of notes that I can rely on. Basically, I don't need to look at the textbook, I don't need to look at my workbook to revise from in the future. And I found that way of doing it means that you're actively recalling, because you're actually seeing a piece of information and you're trying to figure out whether you know that or not, or whether you've written that down in your school book or not. And B, you're creating a future resource that you can depend on completely for when it comes to the peak of exam season. When it comes to like the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks leading up to exams, you can just go back to those flashcards and have a look at them again. So those are 2 ways of really solidifying a piece of work. A mix of both would be nice, but as long as you're doing one that's you're fine. And what was the second part of your question? Sorry.
So the second part was more focused on the biology aspect. So given that, of course, you are very set on doing medicine, of course, right? And biology makes up a substantial portion of, going into such a field, because that requires a lot of not only depth and understanding of a given concept, but the theory that's involved in biology is truly immense. And you'll only go on to learn more theory, more information with respect to anatomy and how possibly even drugs work going into medical school. But say for the situation and stance that you're in currently, for those who are studying biology in the lead up to their exams, how would you describe the kind of technique that is required, let's say, in the lead up to their exams? Is there anything that they should do or look out for in order to get that top end grade? Is there anything that they should not do or refrain from? So just give us a couple pointers in that direction for someone, of course, going into A-level biology this year.
Okay. First of all, biology is the hardest science of them all, even harder than physics. And I'll tell you why. It's not the actual. It's not the actual content. I haven't done physics, but I can confidently say it's the hardest, based off what other people have told me, based off what teachers have told me. It's the hardest science that you can do, mainly because of the actual exams. Regarding the content, yes, there's a lot, but it's fairly easy to understand if you use the correct revision methods. You can, basically, biology relies on you understanding the information more than memorizing it, compared to, well, I don't know, compared to what? Maybe compared to chemistry, where understanding doesn't really play as much as a role. Like, you can remember, you know how there's like, you have to remember all of the formulas, or you have to remember all of the some of the equations that you have to remember. You don't really, there's not a way of understanding them when you have to recall that piece of information, if you see what I mean. Whereas biology, if you understand it, you can sort of follow that path and recall a certain piece of information. So like I said, the hard part comes with the actual exam questions, because it's insane, some of the questions, right? That you never know what they're looking out for. You never know when you're going to lose marks, when you're going to gain marks. So it's really hit or miss with this. And the best way to make sure you hit rather than miss is to practice exam questions. I cannot stress enough how much it requires you to practice exam questions, more than chemistry, more than physics, more than any other subject you're doing. Exam questions are probably the only way to go about revising for biology. Once you've spent about 1 month leading up to the exam, once you spent a good amount of time revisiting the content and understanding the piece of information, I'd just solely focus on exam questions. Even if you find that there's a gap in your knowledge, just do exam questions. Because sometimes, if there is a gap in your knowledge, as long as you know the format of an exam question and paper, or what they're looking out for, then you can easily answer it. And with me, certainly with me, I'm an overthinker. So if I come across a question that I necessarily don't know the answer to, and I can't figure out what it is they're looking out for, then I'm just going to write everything that's on my mind. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I'm not too sure, but it has done me well in certain circumstances, especially in biology. So if you come across an exam question where you don't really know the specific answer it is they're looking for, write down everything you know surrounding that question, surrounding that topic, and you're guaranteed to pick up at least 1 or 2 marks. If it's like a 4 marker or a 6 marker, at least 1 or 2 marks, compared to if you write down nothing, because you know nothing about what they're asking for. So that's one thing I'd say. You have to approach biology with the mindset that, okay, at the end of this year, I'm just going to practice, more than chemistry, more than physics, more than any of my subjects. You just have to apply the knowledge rather than take it all in. That's the main thing for biology. And the other thing is, at the start of the year, I got horrendous marks. I got horrendous marks. I was probably like in the top bottom 5% of people who got good marks. So I'd say don't be what's the word? Don't feel down after getting those marks back, and don't feel like you're absolutely useless as you fail biology. it's just all part of the process. You have to trust in the process. You have to bear in mind what I said, keep revisiting the topic and learn from your mistakes. See where you made mistakes, type them up on some online format, whether it's flashcards or like Notion. Have those mistakes embedded somewhere so that you're not going to make them again. Because just looking at your exam paper, seeing like 20 out of 50 and putting your head in your hands and thinking, oh, I'm never going to see that again, that's the wrong way to go about it. Just learn from your mistakes, but don't be put down by those low marks, because it's part of the process.
That's really good. Thank you for clarifying that, Vihursh. It's a really, really good way to go about it. But now that you've mentioned it, learning from your mistakes is arguably one of the best ways to learn, because it's reinforcing that aspect of feedback, right? That getting that feedback mechanism in. And when you know that you're continuously getting a certain type of question wrong continuously, it'll only ever divert your focus to ever want to improve in that specific area. So really, with that being said, to kind of like summarize and describe all in all how you pull this off, between writing, because I know that you just mentioned making notes, right? How would you say is the best way to make notes? Because of course, achieving 3 stars, that's no easy feat. You don't just get that through just making notes anywhere, right? You just, by being unorganized, making notes here, making notes there. Of course, you've definitely used some form of centralized system in some way, whether that would be making notes in a specific notebook or using both the online aspect and hard book aspect in tandem with one another to complement and aid your learning. So with that being said, incorporating the use of feedback, right, in what you've gotten wrong, right, to develop your understanding. And actually forget that first part, just tell us how you pull this off with the use of the technique of note-taking and how you did that in that regard.
Okay, so note-taking is very difficult in class, and it's a struggle for me personally, especially if you have bad handwriting. Now, I'm not saying my handwriting's awful, but when I rush, I write messily, and it's not very nice to see. And when you're looking back on that piece of paper, you'll be like, oh, what is this? I can't read this. I can't be asked. I'm going to go to sleep. I can't be asked to revise right now. That's the sort of writing that I would come away from a class with. But the way to grow from that and learn from that is to, like I said before, if you have another notebook, or if you prefer typing, a Word document, or Docs, Google Docs, anything, an online or offline piece of an online or offline resource that you can always look at with confidence and positivity and be like, yes, I made that. I understand exactly what I'm talking about, and it looks beautiful as well. And the way I did that was, like you said, it was like a hybrid of offline and online. Sorry, I used a separate separate notebook to rewrite basically all of the important information that I had taken away from a class, and I basically prioritized. I'm thinking ahead. That's the other thing. I'm always thinking towards the exam. I'm thinking like, what's the question that they're going to ask me based on this piece of information that I have? What's the most likely question? What's the one that they're really going to hone down into, and try to get like a nice 3-marker or 4-marker that's going to trip everyone else out but not me. And once you've identified that part, write it down, make a note to yourself, put an asterisk or write it in caps, write it in a piece of paper so that you're not going to forget it. And if you don't come back to that piece of paper, or if you find you can't always access that textbook or notebook, then do it online. Like I said, I use flashcards. I can access these flashcards from wherever I am on my phone, or if I'm using my laptop. Use those flashcards, or I don't know, what other resources, Notion, or just a Google Docs that you can access, and just look at the piece of information. Because at the end of the day, no matter where you write it, as long as you're looking at it, that's the important thing. As long as you're revisiting it over and over again, that's all that you can do for you to get an A star.
Yeah, I totally do. No, that's so good. That's so good. You really put that in such a clarified and beautiful way to our viewers, and hopefully all our viewers can follow in your footsteps and achieve,
Wow.
let me just say, it's no easy feat because there's a lot of time and effort to achieve what you just achieved, but also we have to factor in other things. There's one thing that we haven't discussed today, I'm sure we definitely will do at some point, is we are not always going to have a dedicated revision time. There will be some days where we don't do revision, okay? And that will happen. That's a nature, regardless whether that would be you just busy and you just don't have time for it. But somehow, Vihursh, you've, regardless, irrespective of that, whether it is that you have something else going on, karate, some other activity, making sure that your sibling is occupied and whatnot, you've kind of brought everything together and still found time to execute. So just to round off today's pod, because if you can, in a couple words, because there's of course a lot that you can say regarding this, maybe that could be for another time, but just for today, in a summarized manner, if you could, to our viewers, time management, how did you do it this year?
Damn, that's a big question. I don't know.
It's very loaded. Sorry.
I don't know how I did it. I genuinely, no, I don't know, because, like you said,
okay. If I
always no. I'll answer the question. I will answer the question, but I just always have something to do, and that's not revision somehow. And there's, like you said, I'm doing a lot of extracurricular activities, and one thing that popped in my head during this video was, I feel like we should make like a year 12 guide for people, because when you enter year 12, you have so much in your mind. You have so much to do throughout the year, irrespective of academics. You have extracurricular to think about, supercurricular to think about, work experience, work in general, volunteering, all of these things that you need to build up your portfolio to apply to university. University is just a year away, and when you realize that coming to year 12, your time management goes out of the window. You don't know what to do when. You don't know how quickly or how efficiently you're actually doing it. And that's one thing I definitely struggled with at the start of the year 12 and even into the middle of year 12. Towards the end, last 4 or 5 months, I figured out that your priority at the end of the day relies on your academics. So when you realize that I need at least 3 months minimum, 3 months to revise for these exams, once you've gone into that mindset, then you find that you start prioritizing revision. And when you can also incorporate it, you find that you actually have a lot of free time. That's the other thing. When you enter year 12, you have a lot of free time that you didn't have when you were in GCSE. So if you just utilize that free time to do small bits of revision or homework, to go over a piece of information or revise, then you realize that all of these small acts, all of this small time dedication will actually pay off in the end, and they'll build up to overall improvement. So I'll just say, I'll reiterate it. Do a little bit whenever you find that you have a little bit of time, because over time is all going to accumulate, and make sure you get that A star or 3 A stars or 2 A stars or even an A at the end of the year, and you'll be happy with yourself.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, Vihursh. You really put it in such a descriptive, informative way for our viewers to hopefully follow by. We've covered a multitude of different ways in which whether that would be the techniques that you would use, the consistency and discipline that would be required, time management strategies, possibly even tailored advice to a specific given subject like A-level biology, and in your case that you find to be possibly even the hardest A-level, which to me, I'm like, wow, you know what? I could even agree with that statement, given that I did A-level biology, but then again, I did also do A-level physics, and I can understand and appreciate the complexities behind each respective A-level. Now, understanding why A-level biology can be so difficult, I can understand that. So I'd like to, on behalf of the audience and myself, thank you, Vihursh, for your time today and passion and infectious energy, because all I got from throughout today is the passion that you have towards not only education and academia, but really and truly, I'd say medicine in general, because I feel like if you're coming in with this kind of passion and energy right now, I could only imagine the kind of infectious, passionate energy that you'll only give off going into medical school. Actually, now that I think of it, I would not want you to be infectious going into medical school, but metaphorically, yes. So
Yeah.
bit of a
Well,
bit of a sticky one still with that, but irrespective.
I'm not gonna lie.
What were you
This
gonna say?
felt very. I'm not gonna lie. This felt very formal. I felt like I was just yapping away half the time, but
Oh yes,
I mean, if
yes.
it's useful, it's useful. If it did feel very formal, like I felt
Yeah.
like I couldn't breathe throughout, because you're putting me on the spot with these questions, but that's good, man, because that means that I give you like genuine answers.
It was maybe the way that I was coming across.
No, I appreciate the genuine.
But I think it was also the way that I was coming across as well. No. But
Okay.
irrespective of that, I think today would be incredibly invaluable to all our viewers. And guys, take it on, take on everything that Vihursh has said, and hopefully our discussion today has incredibly been both insightful and informative in your understanding. And now, Vihursh, do you have any last words to say to our audience?
No, thank you for listening, and if you enjoyed it, then do hit like it, and also subscribe, and also follow, because we've got a lot planned. And I say that every time, but we do have a lot planned.
You know what it is? We've got a lot planned, but it's just execution, finding the time that we're both free, and just being able to just pull it off, because it's just one of those things that we feel like we can do, but we just can't. But I think that's just on me, and I need to make more of an effort.
It's on both of us, man.
But no, don't be silly. Let me just do. I do want to say one thing, that you did say something about an A level, an introduction to year 12 A level, right? Or a survival kit going into year 12. I think that's something that we should definitely start to develop over the next coming weeks, and possibly put out on Notion, possibly a link for you guys to access and have a look through. Bit of a survival guide, also reflecting on what we've learned, because guys, it's only great to learn from mistakes. The pitfalls that both Vihursh and I have had previously is something that you guys can pick up on. So definitely an informative, cohesive, comprehensive guide, survival guide, as I'd like to say, in achieving. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna leave it there. Vihursh, have you got anything else to say? I've already asked you this. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
I know that. I know.
Okay,
I know.
I'm chill.
Listen, stop showering me with compliments.
All right.
Such a beautiful day.
I'm ending it. I'm ending this. All right. Thank you for.
Why are you ending it? You were just showering me with compliments, young man.
No, I don't know why I said beautiful.
You look beautiful. Well,
I genuinely don't remember one more. Okay, you know what? Let's leave it. Thank you for interviewing me today, because that's how it felt like. You felt like you were interviewing me, put me on the spot. Thank you for that. I'm gonna go.
Oh, pretty.
All right, see ya.
Okay, thank you guys. Take care.